In previous lessons, we have learned the process to connect to the SAP logon. And of course, the system, once it has checked our credentials, both the user and the password, if they are correct, it will show this screen, which we only know this as the user menu, or we can also call this, of course, the SAP C access menu, which actually is the official name for this. But why is this menu really known as the user menu? Well, just because this is the menu that the employees of an organization will just connect to and run the transactions to post their day-to-day activities. Actually, we want to show in this lesson some of the paths that end users use in their day-to-day activities, and of course they will belong the ones that we will show to the most used application modules of the system. So well, let's start opening the a path in accounting, which of course, as you probably know, most of the users of this part of the system are just accountants or just administrators. And of course, most of the documents they create end up just showing in the financial statements. Well, for this, we want to open the folder for accounting. And of course, this is just really easy because we only need to double click. And as you can see, the system will expand the full node. Actually, here we have a lot of subfolders, but right now we will just focus in financial accounting. So let's just double click that one. And we will open account receivable, document entry, invoice. So as you can see, when we get to the last level of a path, we will have these lines which have a different icon, and the icon actually is like a Lego block, Lego building block, and that is just for us to know that that is a transaction, of course, not just another folder. Right now we have selected the invoice app, and this one is to post an incoming invoice that we just are receiving from a vendor. And well, as you should know, just with this demo, to start a transaction in the user menu, we have to double click on it or just press enter. As you can see, the system immediately shows the values, all the fields that are necessary for posting in this scenario an incoming invoice. So we can enter the vendor, the dates, everything. But that is not the purpose of this lesson. So we will also show how can we just finish a transaction maybe that we started just by accident. So this is really easy. We just need to click the exit icon. In some transactions, the system will just have a warning saying, do you really want to exit this transaction? For the time being, that is exactly what we want, so let's just click yes. Now we are back at the user menu, and as you can see, we have multiple user transactions, but that's the point. All of these transactions have something in common. These just user transactions. And what that means is that, of course, not even one of these transactions will allow the user to modify the customizing settings of the system. They are just for posting business transactions in our day-to-day activities. So well, now that we have seen this, we can just close this path. And again, to close it is just really simple because we just have to double click the open nodes. And as easy as this, now we have the full menu, exactly as we had it at first. Because now we want to continue this demo, and for this we will open a path, but this time around it will be in the logistics section. Of course, as you can imagine just by the name, here the end users will post everything from a purchase order to just the creation of a master record, like a bill of material, or just something that has to do with inventory. But well, to really see this, let's just open logistics. And right away, we have here the materials management group of applications. So everything that is inside this node has to do with the application module that we can use for both inventory management and just procurement. So well, this is called as materials management, and well, let's explore this further. So let's just double click on the first node, which is just materials management. And well, we'll open purchasing, purchase order, create. And for example, here we have transaction ME21N, which is just a transaction that we can use when we already know what like the target supplier for a particular purchasing order. We can create that particular document with this transaction. Right now, we again want just to briefly mention that we have so many transactions and even some more nodes inside of this, because again, the whole process, depending on what we're running, it can be very complex, or sometimes some business processes are not as complex, but again, that will just dictate how many transactions and how many nodes we have. But then again, it is important just to notice that all of these are end user transactions. So again, none of these will just modify customizing settings. But what is also important is that, for example, some of these business processes that start in materials management, for example, they have a consequence in financial accounting. And thanks to the correct and really nice way that the system has been coded from day one, the system is integrated, so everything that happens, for example, in materials management and that has a financial consequence, will be immediately shown in financial accounting. For example, it could be an invoice that after we have a purchase order, then we post the goods receipt and then the invoice verification, and that will be or have a consequence, sorry, in financial accounting. And of course, then the team in accounts payable will just handle the payment process. Well, now we have checked these very big two areas like accounting and logistics, but specifically materials management. But we can close this, and as you can see, of course, we also have sales and distribution, for example, or production. So I mean, inside logistics, we have so many things. And even if we close logistics, we have, for example, human resources, which again, it's like a very huge area. And again, this is what we just call application modules in the SAP system. Now you're probably wondering, why is there another menu, which is called the customizing menu or just the implementation guide? And well, we also want to know how can we get there, and like which kind of employees use that menu and for what purpose. But to really understand this, we first need just to comment the reason why the ERP systems have been so successful in the past few years. Because, well, actually, we have to go one step before, and we just have to analyze what happened before there were successful ERP systems. Before we have those, most of the big corporations of the world, what they did, they just hire, and they have in their payroll just a very big group of programmers, just people who are really great, just developers and just people who are really great with coding. And that team, well, they have, most of the time they have multiple sub teams, but there was like a main team just in charge of the main system to run all the big corporation. So well, this is really interesting and important, because even sometimes just the developers, they will use different programming languages. So inside one corporation will have so many systems, and again, even some systems with different application programming languages. And this poses a fundamental problem, a really important problem, because the problem is that if we have that kind of scenario, if we have that kind of situation, then we need a lot of, like, again, a big team, but this team of employees, they have very like specialized knowledge, and most of the times they only know, for example, maybe one programming language, and they were just responsible for one of the systems or one part of the main system. But then again, what happened is that this creates a dependency, like a bond between the corporation and these employees. But at the point that the corporation sometimes they needed and they relied like 100% on these employees. that of course leads to problems, maybe like really high salaries these employees will demand, because they know probably just the importance of their work to the organization. But that is not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is just if they uh, get sick, or if they just leave the organization, if they find a better opportunity. Then the problem was that we needed to hire someone else, of course, that has this very specific set of skills. I mean, especially just the coding skills, and in the particular languages that we had, to just update our system, maybe modify some settings. And well, it was just again like a very dangerous situation. And now let's just analyze what happens with an ERP system such as well, the ERP from SAP, in which just any corporation can acquire this software, just the licenses, and it's just so much easier to adapt the software to the needs that are specific to the corporation, because we no longer need to be the experts in coding. Actually, what we only need to really know is just the customizing settings of the system. And well, for this we need consultants, because they are the ones who have the in-depth knowledge of the system, and of course of the customizing settings that can be modified to just adapt the system to the exact needs of a given customer. So the big advantage is that we don't need to be very like have coding skills. We don't need to study actually sometimes years and years just to get to a good level of coding skills, because we can also, what's important is we can come from any background, any professional background, and even like our studies, they don't need to be IT studies, because again, we to adapt the system, we just modify the customizing settings, and we don't need to understand coding. Of course, now what is happening is that there are so many customers that have purchased SAP, just licenses to use SAP, that consultants are on high demand, because even though it is not required to have coding skills, we still need to be experts in the customizing settings of the system, and actually also in the business processes, because every customizing change that we like, well, that we just start in the customizing settings of the system will have a direct impact in the day-to-day activities of the employees. So of course we also need to like really understand and be clear with the business processes, not only the customizing settings of the system. And this now has created a similar effect in which consultants are on such high demand, and there are no so many certified consultants, especially that the ones that are very knowledgeable of the system, and also if they are certified, most of the times we can like ask for higher and higher salaries for our work. So well, we have already mentioned the reason of just the success of just the ERP systems. So well, um, now let's focus a bit more on the role that consultants play, because they will be the ones who get to the customizing menu, modify the settings, and these settings will be modified so that the system can be adapted to the needs of each and every organization that purchases licenses. So well, now of course one of the most important things is missing, because we need to show how to get to the customizing menu, and how can we exploit the all the settings that are available there in customizing menu, so we can adapt the system. And well, what is true is that we can get to the customizing menu from the user menu, and as you can see here, we have a complete section which is called tools. So let's open this path, and as you can just see, we have a very big array of folders. Inside of them, of course, we have some transactions, but all of them are just for the technical settings of the system. Actually, here we can now just briefly mention about ABAP, because as we have been saying, there are some consultants that they need to know the ABAP coding programming language. Again, it's not required for each and every consultant to learn this language. But there are some specific consultants that, of course, are technical and they really like coding and they have now become familiar with the ABAP programming language. And what is their main task? Well, most of the times it's just to expand the skills of the system, to say it in a way. That just means create additional programs, create sometimes interfaces that will enable customers that use the SAP system to fulfill some requirements that that particular requirement was not considered in the standard system just by the central decision-making process in the central headquarters of SAP. So, well, you might be thinking, oh, but then it's again like this circle because we are now falling again in the dependency of people who have these very specific coding skills. But that is not the case because those just those consultants, they of course they create programs, but they are never tasked with the big task to create a full system from scratch. So that just means the organization has never like a big dependency on one person or just one team. We have the standard system, which again, of course, it's coded just in central offices in SAP, and just these consultants, the ABAP consultants, can expand the capabilities of the standard system if needed. And well, we know one of the main objectives of this demo is just to show and to learn how can we get to the customizing menu. So for this, let's just close everything that is ABAP related. And as you can see, we have this customizing node. So let's just open that one. Inside of this one, we have the IMG, which is just like an acronym for implementation guide. So well, let's open this one. And well, as you can see, we have the SPRO transaction. Now, why is it called IMG? That is something that's really interesting to analyze, and we will just discuss even further in some of the next screens. But just IMG stands again for implementation guide, and as the name is saying, it's just a guide to implement the SAP system. So the original team that created the system, they said, okay, we really need this customizing concept to come to life. And it has to, or we have to help consultants just to really understand what are the steps that they need to follow to exactly customize the system to the needs of a corporate group. So for that is the reason we call it the IMG. But well, right now, again, we are here, we have the execute project transaction, and actually it's the transaction code is SPRO. So as with any other user menu transaction, to start this, we just need to double click. Now the system shows this screen, but this is not the customizing menu yet. This is like an intermediate screen in which, well, just imagine if we were just in a project in which well, we needed to implement the SAP system, we could have specific lines here for each application module. And well, we could just select that, and the system will in the next screen just show the customizing transactions for that particular section of the project. But well, right now we are not using that capability, so we just need to come here at the top left and click the first icon of the toolbar of this transaction, which is the SAP reference IMG. So let's click on that one. And finally, we have the IMG customizing menu. Of course, we just need to mention and just really learn what is the best way to know exactly in which in which menu we are. Well, that is just if we have a look at the top. And trust us, this is a very common mistake, common problem. Some people have, especially in their first steps, they don't really know in which menu they are. But as you can see here, we have at the top just display IMG, so we know we are in the implementation guide. So well, it's just really important to understand everything that has to do with this menu and how to use it. But why is that important? Because as we have been saying, we can modify the settings of the system here, and every setting that we modify, every new entry that we create, depending, but most in like 99% of the times, has a direct impact on the lives of our end users. So we can just adapt the system to help or even help better our end users. So as much or time we can just dedicate to learning this, then we'll be more experts in the SAP system. And well, actually, all the next lesson, we will just use that lesson to explore this menu a bit in more detail. But of course, that is something that will come in the next lesson. So just, well, keep learning with all of our trainings.